Dan here, DD Speed Shop. So I'm hanging tools miscellaneous on the wall. The shop's clearly a disaster. We just got that Camaro kind of finished, gave it a quick spit shine, and now that it's basically done, unfortunately, I mean, there's not really the payoff you want of going and be able to drive it or do burnouts on it because it has no exhaust. So we're trying not to piss off the neighbors altogether, and it only has back brakes, which are very counterproductive for burnouts. So it kind of is what it is. I thought we'd just kind of have a little, Viking send off to it a little bit and address a few comments. People have been asking a bunch of stuff, and we just want to get into it. But before we get into that, I actually wanted to say a real heartfelt thanks. I'm actually not even wearing one of our own shirts today, but all the people who bought a shirt and stuff like that, we really appreciate it. All the money is, it's being saved right now, which is a rarity for me. I gotta say, not spending. What a concept. Actually, I have spent the least amount I've ever spent on cars in the last 2 months, and my Visa got stolen. The number. So, you know how that happened. I haven't bought anything weird other than just the auto pays, and somehow now it's a, disaster. Awful. But hey, it kind of keeps it fun, right? Anyway, so again, thank you so much. So that being said, the old Camaro, we had a bunch of people, have been asking kind of questions about it, and we've been selling a lot of cars, and a lot of people are, not in a negative way in any way, talking about stuff. And I guess it all depends how we look at it. But for all these cars, like, where does it end is a question that's kind of come up, and it's more my own thing than the buyers. But I try and sell stuff. I honestly feel as though when you're buying a car from me, it's the most honest car you can buy. I know I play around with the flipper and the scam and all that. A little bit of clickbait here and there, never hurt anybody, right? But in all reality, I make sure the ad is honest. I try to be honest when I talk to someone. There's a couple of videos out there kind of showing what the car is. So love it or hate it, it's an honest car in my mind. Now, where does it end? So, I always worry. So the first car we sold was that 57 Chevy, the Black Widow car, which arguably had the most amount of miles on it, and I felt the best about it. But I sold that to kind of a buddy because of the old buyback clause. And he was like, he's beating the tar of it, changing the wheels and tires. He took it to back to the 50s. And I'm like, oh God, I hope the thing doesn't, lunch a head gasket or, blow a transmission, or, the rear end blows up, for crying out loud. The guy's beating the hell out of it. And at the end of the day, you guys know when you're dealing with used cars, and for the most part, a lot of things, taillight warranty, when it leaves, it's over. Like, when that 57 left, and it hung a right onto the street, and I could hear him, wah! I'm like, holy moly, please don't explode right there, because I'd feel bad about it, but what do you do, right? And then this week's coming up, or I don't know what this video is going to be, but the two boys from out east are flying out, and they're going to work on this 56 Chevy and the 57 hardtop and drive her home, and they have paid me. They've got the title. It's all intents and purposes, it's a done deal, other than we still have the cars in the storage units. We got to bring them home, and they're going to wrench on them. And they're good guys, and I think they understand. They want to have their little roadkill vice grip adventure, and I wish them all the best of luck, and I'm going to be here to help, and they can use whatever tools they want and spare parts, and we're going to make it work. But the fact is, those are two untested cars. The 56, I will say, I built that for Power Tour or for Danny to drive, so it should be pretty good. But the parts are good, but it might have a fuel line that rubs against something in the suspension. It might have a bad ground that comes loose. It might, all those things, like teething problems, which happen. And that 57, I was not thinking that would be a drive home car, but, and we're not talking about driving an hour. We're talking about driving, I think it's 3 or 4 days.
Here across the country.
If things go well, it's 3 or 4 days. But you know what? It'll be a heck of a story, and I think I made sure I told them, hey, here is the deal. And it's all good, so, don't call me from Thunder Bay cursing me out. These are what the cars are, and they were priced accordingly, and I think it went well. But I guess it's just, where does it end? I do think I overthink it. Maybe it's a little bit, you're really working against me here. I was trying to clean up, and Danny's like, talk about this, talk about that.
Okay.
So,
Terrible impression of me.
Oh. Speedometer gear thing. Put that out so I don't lose it. So there was that. You know, the guy bought the Camaro, he knew what he was buying, so that was good. The Cobra, that was, an older gentleman, same deal, wanted the Cobra forever, this and that. And it was a different story because he was not a car guy. I don't want to say not a car guy. He's into motorcycles and stuff like that, and his kid was into Jeeps and stuff. But he wasn't your quintessential...
He wasn't a hot rod guy.
He wasn't a hot rod guy.
His own admission.
He's not. He was a guy that wanted a Cobra. And super nice guy, very friendly. But it was really different too because I felt like, and again, I feel like kind of a good car to buy off a good guy, not to toot my own horn, but that car's been on the internet. It's very honest. It was what it was. It was, well priced. It was a bargain of a Cobra as far as I'm concerned. But he learned a lot of stuff along the way, which he was, fine about. But when you're buying an old car like that, or classic car, whatever you want to look, it's not like you go into a dealership and you're buying whatever, right? So that was the thing. Like, he learned a few lessons along the way. One thing in Manitoba, which we have, which is criminal, if you ask me, but we have to pay sales tax on used cars. And you actually have to pay the sales tax on what the car is valued at, not what you paid, which is very frustrating. So I make sure when, for instance, this car, when I bought it, it was, what I bought was what I bought. So you go in, here's the picture, here's what it's worth. Sometimes make you get an appraisal if you want to fight it. You pay the sales tax based on the purchase price, because at the end of the day, what it is right now, if I had to pay sales tax on it, it would be crazy. Lesson learned there. Actually, that kind of off the tangent here, but that 67 Camaro, I went in there and with the pictures, and this is what I did. It was all good, blah, 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 and put it under my name, did the ownership so I could sell it with a title. The car was gone, that's all fine. Then they sent me a letter saying, hey, just so you know, we have reassessed this, and if you want to fight it, you can, which I would have, but the car's gone, so it's irrelevant to a different province, actually, who don't have sales tax. But if you want to fight it, you can. They came back and said that car is worth $36,000, which I would have to pay 7%, 5%, I forget what the number is, on it. On a used car that's had sales tax paid on it, well, at least once, because it was bought new. So it's criminal, but that's how it is around here. So anyways, the Cobra individual ran into that, where they said, well, according to our papers, a Cobra is worth $60,000 to $80,000, and you're going to pay sales tax on it. So that's a damned if you do, damned if you don't. He sure didn't pay $60,000 for it. But now do you want to fight with the insurance company to tell you it's worth less? Because if anything ever goes wrong, you want it to be worth more. So stuff like that's always kind of funny. So there you go. That was kind of, I tried to help him along in any way I could. I can't get in there and change the sales tax laws as much, because if I could, I tell you. But that's just kind of nature of the beast around here.
Well, and so to that point, I think you're very, very generous with your time after you've sold a car to somebody. If they have questions or if they have this or that. But at what point does that end? Because, you can't hold someone's hand the entire time. And at the end of the day, it's no longer your car and your responsibility. So,
I guess I'm not too smart. I always look at, if you're a car guy, we're friends automatically. It's like we're in the fraternity. So, you know what? I've talked to the convertible guy since he was gone, sent me pictures of the car. It's going to be in, he's got a car show. I'm sure I'll get pictures of that, which is kind of cool. Camaro guy, I actually texted them today just saying about I have extra parts and stuff like that. So, if I'm going to get rid of stuff, well, if you want it, here's first dibs, so you stay in touch. Everyone's been really cool. No one's been weird or whatever and trying to be get stuff after the fact or freak out or, hey, this wasn't what I was expecting. It's a used car. It is what it is. So that's the way I look at it, and hopefully you guys do as well. At this point, there can't be anything, hidden. I know there's maybe a few weeks ago or a few months ago now, there was some controversy over Maple Motors. They're all over the internet. They're selling cars left and right. And right now, actually it's just a couple days ago, they're selling one of those, a Camaro, but it's actually a Firebird. And somebody had, which is, I've thought about doing it many times. Firebirds are cheaper to buy than a Camaro. And if they're rough or whatever, the sheet metal's all the same. So they dressed it up as a 67, 8, 9, I don't know what it was, Camaro. But he said, this is a Firebird, this is a Firebird, this is a Firebird. And I'm like, what a risky maneuver, especially when you're don't want to say a flipper, but a reseller. That's what they are. They're not keeping them. They buy them and sell them. And, you know, that's just the nature of the beast. You show the best you can. It is what it is. You try not to hide anything and you carry on. It's when people end up buying a car and end up, the car is worse than they thought it was, and they try and hide that and they sell it on to the next guy. That's a problem. There's been a few times I've bought something that wasn't what I thought it was, or was worse than I was, you know, hoping for, or whatever, and you're caught holding the bag. It is what it is. You can't pass it on to the next guy. Well, I guess you can, but
You just have to do all the work then.
I believe, yeah. Well, or you can be honest. You could sell it as junk, but I just believe in the car guy karma and, you know, fixing it if it's broken or selling it. If I buy something for $5,000 that turns out it's worth $2,000, either I got to fix it to make it worth $5,000, or I got to, you know, take my lumps and sell it at a loss and carry on. Just be honest about it. So there you go. I got to clean up a little bit. Then we'll be right back. You know, a lot of times I know the way I clean drives people nuts because I just sweep everything into a pile, tools, garbage, whatever, and then I pick through it like a little gremlin, and I kind of get to it. You know, the other thing, so the comments have been different lately on the videos because the videos have been different. I mean, in the whole time we've been doing this, what's this? We haven't really been a Blue Chew.
Oh,
Never even paid
they
us.
still haven't paid us actually.
Fuck, guys. You know what? Blue Chew is the greasy car flipper of the advertising world. First time taking an advertiser and they didn't even pay us. Anyway, don't worry, won't hold a grudge. The comments, so I'm not a car flipper. I never have been. I like buying exactly what I want to own, fixing it exactly the way I want to fix it, and drive it exactly the way I want to drive it. I'm not one for taking much coaching or advice. Ask Murr, he knows. I just kind of do whatever the hell I want. Now, that being said, obviously you can't put the brakes on backwards and stuff like that. There's a right and wrong way to do things. I understand that, but if you've watched a few videos, I think you put together by now, look at all this treasure. I kind of do whatever the heck I want, and comments be damned, unless you put the throw-out bearing in backwards. But, so a lot of the comments have been along the lines, especially on this car, just sheet metal, screw it together, get it as cheap as you can, get it down the road, you know, yada, yada, yada. And I was like, you know, I could, for sure, but, you know, I am putting it out there for everybody to see. And I know not all the work is maybe SEMA quality, but there is a certain amount of pride you have to take in your work. And I hate to do something that the next guy then has to blatantly undo. That just seems like a waste of time and labor and money and all sorts of stuff. And if I can put it together properly and have the right parts, why not do it the right way?
And at this stage for this car, if the person does want to take stuff off and blatantly undo it, that's like by their own choice because they want something different. At this point, you put on a pair of front brakes. The thing is running and driving down the road.
Yeah, no, this car right here, and that's exactly how the ad will read, is you could, I mean, put some exhaust on it, go through the brakes, change the one broken leaf spring, wire up some headlights and taillights, and enjoy it. Just, it'd be a driver, you know, bolt the seats in, a few little things like that. But if you had a week with the thing, and I mean, I'm gonna say $1,000, you could have a primer gray, or I mean, flat black, whatever you want, pick your poison, and have a ratty Camaro drive around. Or if you want to be the guy to take it all right apart, by all means. I mean, everything is tacked together and stuff like that, but anything comes apart. There's no issues there. So the problem is, so there's those comments, and I also got some comments on this car and a few of the other ones where people are trying to buy it as cheap as they can. And trust me, I know the feeling. As a guy who wants to buy something as cheap as you can, I get it. And not to sound like an a-hole or whatever, but this car, as cheap as it can, will never happen again because I bought it as cheap as it can. And then I dragged it home, I put it together, I put it on the internet, I did all these things. This car now has a new lease on life. As cheap as you can, you got to drive 10 hours away, buy 2 cars, buy all the parts on a gamble Like when I originally got it, the deal was the guy had told me there's enough to build one car and maybe a half. Well, as it turns out, there's enough to build 2 full cars, you know, so that worked out great for me. But I was accepting the price and the deal and all that sort of stuff over the phone. I had a buddy go out and take some pictures of it, but that was it. So that's how you get as cheap as you can. Now you take it a few steps further. So I've bought and sold a few cars now. I sold a 56 Chevy there a few years ago, and it was a running, same as this, a little bit, maybe not quite as done, but it had a 400 in it, 400 small block, a turbo 350. Actually, you know what it has? It had the drive line that was in that convertible. Now, everything in that convertible was on that. So it had that, like small block Chevy with headers. It had dual exhaust on the convertible. It had the drive shaft, everything. It had the whole front end was rebuilt, the wiring harness, everything in that car. Anyway, so the car was nice, 2-door post. The guy said, no, I'm going to make it into a show car and this and that. So all this is coming off. And I told him, well, hey, you know what? Buy it. And then if you ever want to sell that stuff, you let me know, man, because I'll buy all that stuff right back from you. He goes, no, I don't want it. I want it as cheap as I can. Great, no problem. So I said, okay. So I pulled that thing apart, motor trans out. I pulled the whole front suspension off of it. I pulled the interior out of it, drive shaft, the exhaust. Like it was a shell. And the guy got it for cheaper. And I told him, I said, I'll take the price was the price, and I'll just take off what would cost me to replace it new. So I thought that was very fair. He said, great, no problem. So the car's sitting there on jack stands, tow truck comes up, straps to the front frame rails, and tows it away, and it was gone. I kept the fuel tank, everything on it was gone. Well, then a few weeks later, he calls me and goes, hey, can I buy that front end back? And I'm like, well, it's on another car already. Well, this thing's a real hassle to move around. I'm like, I bet it is. Like a car with no front end is a nightmare. So I actually had a used, an old frame, and I had cut the front section off. So I gave him a used front end that you could put on the car, like you'll take it all apart and put it on, just so the car could roll around the shop or move or whatever. Like a car without a steering box, without anything like that, is a disaster. If it can be pushed around, steered, not as bad. If it runs and drives like this one, life is so much easier. Like, trust me. Otherwise, you got to buy yourself a Bobcat and a sneaker truck to move stuff around. Like that Chevelle in the other garage there, it's got wheels on it, but the front end is, there's no steering on it, so you can't even push it. Like, it's a disaster. You have to have the manpower or the patience or the equipment to deal with that stuff. So just to address those comments there about can you make it cheaper, or why am I doing it that way? I just think it's the right way of doing it. Now, you know what? Someone out there could sheet metal screw this thing together and be happy with it. More power to you. That's just not really my style. So this is the way I like to do things.
All right, talent.
Oh, I'm trying to clean up in here.
You're the talent.
Can't these people just buy more t-shirts so I can take the day off? Thanks again, just a joke. Danny is pointing out, she's basically reading mean comments to me, and I'm addressing them as I'm trying to. I'm just getting beat up left and right, plus the comments are probably like, the garage is so messy. Car flipper. We're back to it. People always say this thing is super sketchy, and they think the car's going to fall right off of it too.
Isn't this like what body people use to hold up the whole
It's
car?
meant for it. I got to say, it's a little, you got to be careful or whatever, but this thing is rated for 6,000 pounds. We'll call it 6,000 Chinese pounds, so just be aware of that. But a Camaro weighs 3,200. I think we're okay. I would not put like a new F-150 on it. It might scare me a little bit, I gotta say, but it is what it is. They do make name brand ones. I think you can buy them by, I don't even know. I don't buy name brand stuff, but I don't even know what this one is. China.
Everyone always asks.
Facebook, $1,500 wherever I paid for it. And there's actually another one that's $1,600. I wanted to buy it, but now it's not the time. Anyway, it's been good. I've tested it. I've used it a bunch. It works good. Primer versus bare metal. So a lot of people were saying I should have just left this thing in all the new sheet metal the way it was. And I get it. There's nothing wrong with that. That's how I would like to buy a car. That being said, the fact that this has been on the internet and there's a bazillion pictures of it, you know exactly what is under the primer. You saw what it was, you saw me prime it, now you see it today. So it's not like there's anything hidden.
also for people that don't realize, obviously there's people that don't watch DD Speech Opera, know who you are, and they get interested in the car, and we send them all the links
Yeah,
to
oh
the
yeah,
videos.
yeah. The Cobra guy he obviously didn't watch, he was not a car guy, so I said, hey, here's some videos of the car, this is what it is, you're taking it apart, doing this, working on it, driving it, you get as much information as you possibly can before you even come down.
And same with Camaro guy, right?
Camaro guy, yeah, he originally was, look at this scam of a car, and his buddy's like, no, that's Dan's car, and then that's how it was. So we watched some videos, and I hope he's happy with it. But, so yeah, we're not trying to hide anything. So maybe that's different. I mean, if you're gonna go up to some stranger, you go, oh God, it's full of fillers, it's all full of primer. For me, I'm trying to always be aware of the neighbors as much as I possibly can. There's a small pile of junk here we're gonna deal with today yet, but if a car's gonna sit outside, if it's all one color, if all the glass is in it, stuff like that, I think it makes a big difference. I think the end user can see this car looks cool now. Like, I love the way this thing looks. I'm a primer guy, obviously, but I mean, this thing right here, I just think back, if I was 16 and there was a 68 primer gray Camaro with Daisy mags on it, and a small block Chevy with no exhaust, I'd be like, oh my God. Like, that's everything I want in a car.
Throwing your boxes.
Oh man. If I would sell my soul for this thing. And now that I have it, it is what it is. So there you go. If you're under 18, I'll give you a deal on it. But primer. Oh yeah, so primer, there you go. What was the other thing we were gonna talk about? You told me, I forget what it was. I wrote down my phone, hang on.
A brief intermission.
No, we'll just do it right now. Hang on. Oh, where to spend the money, right? So, the primer for me, $100, it's all primed there. And this being said, if it sits outside, it's got a little bit of coverage to it. It's not going to rot right away. Not everyone has indoor storage. I'm one of those people. If it's not being wrenched on, it sits outside. So, on a rainy day like today. So, where to spend the money? This car here. So I put the motor and transmission in it, which is something I really wasn't planning on doing. There was a guy who was interested in the car, and I kind of took him on a handshake deal saying, here's the deal, but I want it to be able to run and drive. He was from out of town. He's going to pay someone to come in and pick it up, which is fine. But he says it has to be able to run and drive, because it has to be able to run and drive on a trailer. You hire a company, they're not winching it on there, they're not screwing around. It's not a tow truck service, it's a shipping service. Yeah, so that's fair enough. But the price will reflect it. Yeah, no problem. Cool. So I started looking around. Well, I had the motor sitting back there, and then a friend of a friend had all the parts we used on it. So I spent a few $100s, and I got a transmission, I got the carburetor, the intake, a set of headers, the shifter, a bunch, the accessory drive, the alternator, the water pump, like all that sort of stuff. I was like, well, how do you say no to that? And then I had a drive shaft, which as it turns out is barely long enough, but it does fit. So that's cool. And it had the rear end in it. So the only gamble is going to be the brakes. I knew there was no front brakes. And I was hoping to get the back brakes working. But if the back brakes didn't work, I was like, well, I could cannibalize. We have the full front end off Danny's car, which was a drum brake front end, that little Chevy 2. So worst case, we could have used that and made it so it had at least front brakes. And then, there you go. You kind of hold your end of the deal up. That being said, the guy kind of stopped responding, and here we are, which, such is life. I'm sure something popped up. I didn't get a deposit. Maybe I should have. I'm not too bright with those things. I like to kind of just take people at their word, which this past 2 months I've got burned a few times at that. But you know what? I'm not going to give up. I'm still just going to trust people. You trust people till you don't. So, was that money well spent, or was it money well wasted? I don't really know. In my mind, a running driving car is always better than a roller car. For me, it was time. I really wasn't planning on spending as much time on this car as we did. We still have to get that 57 Chevrolet home. So that was kind of what I was planning on doing when this was just going to be gone as a roller. And that Chevelle popped up with the blue. So ordered a bunch of parts for that. And then again, pure stuff 57, we were going to work a deal on that 55. I really thought we'd be working on that 55 right now. So one car falls through. This one was like, well, I need a little further together. I'm like, okay, perfect. I'll work on that instead of the 55 because it doesn't exist anymore. Then this guy doesn't exist anymore. It's just kind of, it's the way she goes. So the money I spent on this one was very minimal. This was kind of parts I had kicking around leftover stuff. I mean, that's being a hoarder always kind of helps. So we had a lot of stuff we could put on it. At this point, I think this car is the most valuable it's going to be in this configuration. I mean, it's missing a few things, obviously some trim and stuff like that, but I don't feel like this piece of trim is going to affect the value of the car. I don't feel like making all the lights work is going to affect the value of the car. I don't think having like a fancy Holley 4-barrel carburetor is going to increase the value that much. It runs, it drives, it's complete, the doors open and close. Well, this one just opens, it doesn't actually close. But, you know, we're missing a latch for it. Well, it's just rusty. We're gonna pickle it in some vinegar. You know, the wheels and tires I put on it, it had those 14s, those slots, which everyone was in love with because it looks cool, but they were 14s and it needed tires. Trying to find 14-inch tires is expensive these days and hard to find them used. I had these, which and they're 15s, they're daisies, which I like, and they have a set of tires on them, but I flipped the slots for I think $250 just for the wheels, and I think I paid $500 for these wheels and tires when I bought them. So I'm out $250. Now they are my favorite wheel, but you know what? I think they really make this car look nicer. So in my mind, the $250 invested will get me more than $250 back. A, it rolls. It's not on flat tires. 15s just look better on muscle cars. It suits the thing. Before, with those 14s, I mean, it does sit nose high. It must have big block springs in it. But with those 14s, it just looked like a gasser. So now it looks, you know, I don't know, era correct, period correct, whatever it may be. You know, it has this fiberglass cowl hood on it, which I put on just so it's easy to take on and off. I'm going to sell it with the steel hood, which came with it. Brand new steel hood. I don't have hood hinges. Well, hood hinges, I bought them on the 67. They were $150 each, which is a lot of money. And I know, just like everyone else does, this car is probably not going to be on the road in the next week. So at the end of the day, someone could scrounge, look for used ones. Swap meet. Maybe they have a guy who has them. If they want to buy new, they can. If they want to put billet ones on, they can. Like, there's so many options to do it that in my mind, putting $300 into hood hinges to put this hood on doesn't justify, you know, the end user type thing. So that's kind of how I look at it. I'm a big believer in trim. I'm a big believer in headlights and taillights and all that being on there, the grill, all that sort of stuff. Wheels and tires sells a car, and the fact that you can make it run and drive works. So this one didn't have a whole lot of cash put into it. It had a lot of labor. I actually worked on this car a lot, even off camera, just because there was so much stupid little stuff, cleaning stuff, taking stuff apart, running around. Like where all the motor and stuff was, it was 2 hours away. But you know, you hang with your buddies, you do that. So it's time invested and kind of carry on. There's no dash panel on this one. Yeah, would it be nice? Sure, there's no door panels in this one. The 67, we put door panels in. Where does it end?
Well, and that, so right there, how people are like, well, why are you doing stuff that people just undo anyways? Stuff like door panels and carpet and whatever are like the easiest accessories for people to change out. So like, if you were to put a door panel in, I can almost guarantee somebody's changing that. People are so specific about how they like it to look.
Pick color. I like black interiors because they're simple and it's the cheapest.
Yeah.
Black carpet's the cheapest, door panel's the cheapest, all that stuff. But the next person wants to, you know, put a blue interior in it. It's a waste of money. Waste for them and for me. Nobody really wins. A little bit of carpet though goes a long way. The door panels I put in the other car I found on Fluke, but he had them, so I couldn't not buy them because they were like half price. I was like, oh yeah. And at the time it was still my car. But there you have it. So I mean, stuff like that. You got to always kind of think of the end user. And so when I bought the car, I was the end user. So it could be in a million pieces, and that's fine. The guy wanted it gone. This, the goal was, and you know, because of the guy who originally wanted it, and now the way I'm going with it, the end user is going to be someone who is into cars and, you know, obviously wants a Camaro or a cool car, but maybe doesn't have all the skills, doesn't have the fancy welder, doesn't have the, you know, the big heated garage or whatever it may be. Everything that this car needs now can be done pretty well with your Harbor Freight, Princess Auto, Canadian Tire, Home Depot style of tool. Hand tools can be used on it. you could use a flux core welder for a few little things you got to do here, but the real ugly stuff is done, or take it to a buddy who has a welder and get a few things taken care of. But where this car came in as a shell, to take that to anybody and have them make it look like this, I can only imagine the bill. It would just be ridiculous. I mean, I don't know. I put a lot of hours in this thing. I mean, we probably 3 weeks straight of 40 or 50 hours a week, so call it 250 hours. Well, 250 hours plus all the miscellaneous parts and stuff like that. If you dropped off at a shop and they were going to charge you $100 an hour, it's 25 grand. I don't think a car's worth 25 grand as it sits. I'm sure as heck not selling it for that. And that's going to be a running, driving car now, right? So there you have it. Buy the car that's ready for you. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Probably.
Okay.
Look at all these nice piles.
Storage. Have we thanked the people with the t-shirts enough yet? Okay, so there we go. As you can tell, we're basically done cleaning up in the shop here. That means the video's almost done. But one last thing Danny wanted to bring up, and she's right from time to time. So, obviously we're selling all this stuff to try and purchase some out-of-town property. And a lot of people have been giving their advice, which we appreciate. And we're playing it close to the vest. And I don't want to drag this on forever and ever, but I know a lot of people are interested in as to what's happening. So, we're trying to come up with a lot of cash. The reason being, we're actually going to try and keep these two homes, which is turning out to be a difficulty. But we're not sure if we're going to like out of town. I've never lived out of town in my life, and I don't want to sell everything because I really do like what I have here, but I do want to try the other side. And if we change our mind, we can have it back. Best case scenario or worst case scenario, and not to mention, elderly parents always need a smaller place to possibly live and where we can be involved. So those are the reasons we're kind of trying to do it the way we're doing. So we do unfortunately you can't use any equity when you're trying to buy another home, which I realize we're very lucky and privileged and fortunate or whatever. It's a lot of hard work, but that's where we're going. So that's where the cars are going and stuff like that. Definitely. If I didn't have to sell one car, I wouldn't. I know we kind of joked about the last one selling the Nova or maybe the Nomads or whatever, and it's just one of those things. You can always buy another car, and every minute that goes by, it's kind of whatever. And I've learned my lesson when I first bought the first place and the first garage where we did a lot of work. I cheaped out on things, and I waited to do things till I had the money.
You were also 19 and had $0.
I still have $0. Age has nothing to do with it.
That's true.
I'm good at spending. But you know what? The one thing that I did is every time you're like, oh, it's a big, scary move. But every time I've ever done it has always been like, oh, I wish I did this sooner. Whether it was insulating the garage, the first garage, if it was buying a car, starting a YouTube channel, or buying this place and taking all this extra debt, hoping a renter would help and pay, and doing everything in this garage, or, jumping and buying two Camaros you couldn't really afford at the time. Everything kind of works out in the end. So you have to have enough trust, I guess, in yourself. Where I'm struggling is size of property, and I'm sure a lot of you guys will know, and I know bigger is always better, right? But at the end of the day, I think I would like 4 or 5 acres, which I think is lots. We're looking for a smaller house, which is very tricky to find, as it turns out. A lot of you guys like to build houses that are way too big. So I don't want to have to do that, because I have gotten used to the old bungalow lifestyle. Cheap heat, cheap roof, cheap windows.
Also, I'm not cleaning a giant home.
There's just the two of us, a couple of dogs, for the foreseeable future, so we don't need a whole lot.
For the forever future, we're not giving any ideas. It's only ever just the two of us and dogs.
We're not getting any more dogs.
No, and dogs.
Oh, that's what I was talking about. We're getting another dog.
The people are going to be like, when's there going to be a little DD speed shop? And I just want to reiterate, never.
If there ever is, Danny will be a single mom. It's fine. She'll have her own channel. But, so my thought, fighting out shop size, because there is one of everything out there. I don't want just like a triple car garage. I do want an actual shop. I'd like an attached garage where we could park, maybe. What a concept.
Could I park a car in a garage?
I didn't say your car, but cars. And I'm fighting out, I think, a 40 by 40 or maybe even a 40 by 60. That might be getting a little bit big. I love what I do right now, and I put a lot of work out in the garage, but I do think at a certain point it might be nice to slow down a little bit. And I don't want to have a full-size machine shop I have to heat and put a roof on and pay the electric bill and, you know, clear the snow and all that sort of stuff. So that's where I kind of think the out of town is going to be a bit of an experiment. Hopefully it'll go well and we'll love it. And ultimately, you know, as you get older, it might be nice to have maybe in-town living with in-town support and all that sort of stuff as well. So I'm trying to look out, the rare time where I'm looking out for future Dan. Past and present Dan is actually giving a little bit of a shit about future Dan, because I don't want to be that old guy who's on his land and it becomes a burden to people around them, or you can't do stuff, or you're stuck in your ways and you don't want to go backwards. We have a pretty good thing going here, but I do think it's the next step, and luckily you guys keep watching and buying those t-shirts. Thanks so much. We're doing that. So that's just a little tidbit. We'll keep you in the loop. I know a lot of people are asking and stuff like that. It feels very weird to talk about. I can't believe anybody would care about where I live or what I'm planning on doing, but I really do appreciate it. And
we can tell you guys, though, where we are not moving.
Oh, we're not moving to the U.S.
We know there's been many a rumor. I saw there was one rumor apparently that we were going to be moving right next to my script garage.
I don't want to live in a slum with that guy. He can barely afford to have 4 shops.
We are staying in Canada.
Yeah, no, we're not doing that. So, no, we're just trying to get out of town a little bit here, just you know, a few minutes from the edge of town, hopefully, it was just pricey. Enough that we won't be bothered, but also not so far that we can't get to, you know, the keg and, you know, the auto parts store and all the things that I need. So that's that. Thank you so much for watching. I know it's a bit of a weird video, but we do appreciate you, every last one of you, except for the mean people. And we'll see you in the next one, which is Car Tetris. But luckily it stopped raining for a small bit. Oh, look at finance guy got a new hat. How about that? Anyways, we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.